Just after 6 p.m., we have a good-sized agenda. Tonight, 6 p.m. On the third Thursday of the month, which this month is the 20th of July. And I'm going to call the meeting to order. Avery, would you like to give the preliminary meeting information?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening and welcome to the July 20th Historic Resources Commission meeting. My name is Avery Kerner, and with me is Lynn Braddock-Zollner, the Historic Resources Administrator. Together, we will work alongside the Chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings tonight. Before we begin, I have just a few reminders to share with everyone. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the City's YouTube channel and Cable Channel 25. For those who are attending the meeting virtually, please remember to mute yourself when you are not actively speaking to help minimize distractions. When the Chair calls for public comment on an item, anyone attending in person may approach the podium to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually and would like to provide public comment on an item, please use the raise your hand feature to be called upon. We also ask that everyone state their name before they speak to ensure that everyone is able to follow along. And with that, I'll turn the meeting back over to the Chair.
Thank you, Avery. Now we'll have a roll call of the commissioners. Commissioner Haynes. I think he can't hear you. Yeah. It seems that you're having a sound issue. I see that you've unmuted, but we can't hear your voice. So I will, okay, I'll take that as a present. He said present. I could read his lips. Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson here.
Commissioner Klein. I cannot hear Jeannie either.
This one here.
This one?
Oh, here we go. I think we have our sound issue.
Okay, we got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Klein said present also. Can we have a sound check, Will?
Commissioner Haynes present.
Yay, we got it. All right. Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley present.
Commissioner Johnson. I already said that.
Yep.
Sorry. All over the place. Commissioner Ezell.
Present.
And Chair Coleman present. Oh, did I say Hawley? Did I forget you?
Present.
Oh, did I say everybody?
Meyer. We got Jean. The microphone.
Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah.
I don't see her.
Oh, yeah. Is she there? I guess not.
Commissioner Meyer is absent. Okay, moving to item A on the agenda. Have we received communications from other commissioners or the State Historic Preservation Officer or the general public?
You have a few communications this evening. You have National Register nominations for 3 properties in the county that I hope you had a chance to read. There's some really great information in those nominations. And then you have a communication from Candace Davis, who I believe is here and going to speak to you in your public comment section this evening. Typically, for the National Register nominations, if the Historic Resources Commission finds that the property should be listed in the National Register, you send a letter of support to the State Historic Board of Review for their consideration when the nominations are at that board for review.
I believe that sounds appropriate. Any objections to that? To sending a letter in support of these nominations? Other commissioners? No?
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. I have no objections. I would love it if in the future these came with photos of the sites from today.
Okay.
I was so looking forward to those, and then I would get to the end of the nomination and it wasn't there. So it would just be nice.
right. Moving on to ex parte.
You need a motion
Oh, I need a motion, excuse me.
to send the letter.
I will make a motion that we send a letter of support to the State Historic Preservation Office for the nominations of the Lone Star Lake CCC Camp, the Lone Star Lake Dam, and the Sour Crawford Farms Historic District.
Commissioner Klein seconds.
Okay, we have a nomination or a motion and a second. Any discussion? No, I'll call a vote. Then Commissioner Klein,
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes,
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Izell,
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
and Commissioner Coleman, Chair Coleman is aye. And we have one absent, so carries 6 ayes and 1 not present. Now I will call for ex parte communications. Has any commissioner had any communications outside of the meeting?
No.
Hearing none. Any declaration of abstentions for specific agenda items by any commissioner? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to committee reports. I believe we had an ARC meeting this past month.
Yes, the Architectural Review Committee did meet for a project that was deferred, well, sent to the ARC at your last meeting. It will be coming back to you next month with revisions based on the Architectural Review Committee meeting, and I would defer to the chair or Commissioner Hawley if they want to add something about that meeting.
I don't have too much to add. This is Commissioner Hawley. We met with the applicant. It was, I feel, a successful meeting where we discussed some tweaks to the design that will make it more compatible with the neighborhood.
And more in line with those design guidelines. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda.
I would move approval to approve the action summaries of all of the HRC meetings from June 16, 2022 through June 15, 2023.
I'll second that. Commissioner Hawley.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Hawley. Any discussion on these meeting minutes? No? Okay. So I guess we are taking the motion separately for the minutes from the administrative review applications.
You can do either way.
Okay, so let's do the minutes first, and I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Izell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
And Chair Coleman? Aye. So we have 6 ayes and 1 absent. We have several, item B2, administrative approvals, several administrative reviews.
Commissioner Klein would move approval of the attached design review applications according to the standards and information listed in the staff report for each application.
Commissioner Ezell, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Ezell. Is there any comment or discussion on any of these items? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. Motion carries 6-0 with 1 absent. All right, now is the time for addressing the commission. If anyone from the public has any items to speak on that are not on the agenda, on the regular agenda? Yes?
My name is Candace Davis. I live in the Oread neighborhood, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. Some of what I say you may already know, but I would like to share this with you. So I live at 947 Louisiana Street in Oread, and what is really interesting about that house, that is where the LPA got its start. And they call my home the Louisiana Purchase. So I have some history in the neighborhood. I've lived here for over 25 years. But I would like to explain that living in Oread is an extreme challenge because the zoning does not really conform with the structures in the neighborhood. So the neighborhood, probably 90%, is a single dwelling units. And so it's zoned really high density in parts of the neighborhood, even dormitory density, which makes it almost impossible to try and strategize how do you maintain the integrity of your neighborhood and the homes in it. And it is largely a very historic area, has a lot of bungalows, Queen Anne style homes, so at any rate, it's a valuable neighborhood. And I would like to tell you that the residents, since I've been here, have worked 20 plus years to try and bring about some stability and desirability to the area and kind of make sense of this disparity of zoning versus what is actually there. And consequently, I think a lot of the single families and homeowners have moved out because of what has taken place in the neighborhood with renters, but especially with a lot of heavily student renters. And I love the students, that's fine. It's just it would be really nice to have a healthy balance of people living in the neighborhood that are renters that live year-round, homeowners, and I think that's fine. I think that's an example of new urbanism. So I want to let you know that in our work, we've come up with a neighborhood plan. We have a neighborhood association, but our neighborhood plan that you see took us months, if not several years, to complete. This was done with open meetings. It was done in conjunction with all of the stakeholders, whether it's financial people that have an interest in the neighborhood, landlords, homeowners, renters. Everyone was welcome. This was done openly over a period of quite a while. So in the neighborhood, and it's designated in our plan, you can see that there are lower areas of density and higher areas of density. So there actually is a lot of density in the neighborhood in spite of these single dwelling units. The other thing we've done is, as you all refer to, I'm sure, we extended, well, our historic district. So that was a really big deal. Lynn helped out a lot in that effort. And anyway, I'm really proud of that. The other thing we did was we got an overlay district, and we may be one of the, I don't know if we're the first neighborhood, but certainly we're the top of a neighborhood that has an overlay district. And that was done in order to protect this area in some way, because we do have a lot of history there. So this then includes the design guidelines, as you know. This is about 115 pages. Once again, this was a big open meeting. Developers were there, people had comments, and I believe we've done a really good job. I think as residents, we were pretty darn flexible. And you know, everybody was able to have their own take on things. So I just want to remind you, as you know, someone who is out here, the HRC, to protect historic preservation, there is a wealth of history in these old homes in the neighborhood. So it's not just one house you're trying to save or one building or church or whatever. We have a lot of homes, bungalow-style homes, and like I said, you know, many, many different styles, Italianate, Queen Anne style, and it just goes on. So I'm here to share with you a huge concern that I have, and I will tell you, other people in the community have also gone, what is going on at 900-906 Alabama Street? To me, it's a travesty what I saw, and I would say, before I show you the photos, well, maybe I should show you the photos first, but I definitely want to read from your area on page 98 of the OREA Design Guidelines. So first I'll show you this photo. I'll show you a few photos so you can see what I'm talking about. And let's see, I can see it on my screen. Which one do I pick, the image thing?
The share screen, the green button. You have to do it with the mouse.
Oh, here it is, screen sharing.
You have to do it with the mouse.
The mouse. Oh, I have to take the mouse? Oh, wait a minute, the mouse. Okay. I wanted to touch it. Hold on.
You can see the first one. Is this the first one?
That's the first one, so you can see that one. So, and then are you going to have an arrow and I just hit the arrow next time?
You would think.
You would think.
Yeah, it's not exactly working that way. I'll get to the next one.
Okay. So here you see, well.
No, they can see it.
Oh, well, now they can't. Let's go to the first one again. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the first one. This is 900. And you may not realize, but those first 4 windows that you see, that's the end of the house. And then behind it is the addition. And then we can go to the next one. Well, then you're still looking at the house. That's part of the addition and not the actual house. That's next to the bungalow style house. Let's go to the next one. It may not be in order that I had, but this is the house next door. So I'm not done actually with the first house. This happens to be 906. So here was this little bungalow. This is the addition, which is the equivalent of probably larger than the bungalow. Looks kind of nice at this angle, but it is quite large. Okay, the next photo. And thanks for doing this. Okay, now you can see, here's the bungalow, the house 900. See the addition behind this? It encroaches on the bungalow. You can see how large it is. It is, in fact, maybe almost twice the size of the actual house. Okay, and the next one. And this is in the overlay district, mind you. This is supposed to be our protected area. And you can go on to the next one. Okay, so here is a back view of that house. Now, this is a back view of the 906 with the bungalow. So this is the back, and you can see it's 2 stories versus the 1 story. So that's quite large. All right, and next. I'm almost there. So this is the view from 9th Street. So you can see those 4 windows. That's the actual house. What you see beyond that is the addition.
Pardon me. Avery, there's a message in the chat.
I see it. Hey, Kurt. It doesn't sound like the participants joining via Zoom can see the images being discussed.
Oh my.
Do you want me to try and get up and share from the podium?
Well, I think what's happened, I've got a bunch of these viewers open, and I think it's freaking Zoom out.
Okay, do you want, oh,
I'll just kill these ones that are, pictures that are done.
okay.
And that might, yeah, we'll probably,
And we just have that last one to show you.
exactly, we're almost there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go to that last one?
Yeah, just go to the last one. So once again, it's similar to the other one, I guess, but you can see the size and scale. So bear with me, but I would like to read. There are 16 suggestions for kind of regulating or regulations within the overlay district, and I'm just going to read 3. So number 4 says additions should not overwhelm or overshadow the existing buildings. Additions should appear subordinate and be located as inconspicuously as possible. And the next one is that I'm going to read is 7. An addition should complement the scale and massing of the original historic building. And the last one I'm going to read is the final one, number 16. It says additions should be compatible in size, scale, massing, and materials to the original structure and the adjacent historic structures. To me, I don't know if you need to clarify in this what overwhelming means, but to me, it means large. And I think even these 3 things that I read, these segments here, pretty well define what you should be looking at. So my fear, having lived in this neighborhood, having done so much work, is I'm hoping that the HRC, this is our kind of stopgap and our overlay district. So the hope is that you would be able to help in this way. This was approved by the HRC. It was approved. I don't understand. And I guess I want to understand, but I'm afraid doing something like this is setting the tone for the developers who want to go in. They're not living in the neighborhood. I know the 4 people who own this property. They don't live in the neighborhood. And they're going to come in and look at a little bungalow and go, look what they got. We want the same thing. And that happens a lot. And that's why I think these regulations are important to follow. And I don't think this one was hard to see. So that's all I have, and I really appreciate you letting me talk. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please, the next.
Thank you. I'm Marcy Francisco. I live at 1101 Ohio. I want to thank the HRC for their recommendation to the City Commission about the 2 lots that were on 10th and Main. because I think in that case, you absolutely understood what might happen. And in fact, because of the shared parking, the lot that is now going to be allowed for a duplex would only be able to build that size of a duplex because of shared parking that's on the single-family site, and so that property now will always probably be rental. I do appreciate also you're trying to say what do we need to do in terms of the recommendations to make it meet the code. But I did have a concern, and we have developed, my husband and I have developed some multifamily housing, that you were really looking at the elevations. And so the elevation to the south looked like it had two doors right next to each other, but one was moved 6 foot above or closer. So the recommendation that you made that that door should be moved to the west means that the two doors are going to be right next to each other, and the people are going to have, if they want to have a doormat in front of their door, it might be overlapping the door to the other way. One of the nice things about a duplex is feeling as much as you can that it's your house and that it's separate. So I hope you won't be offended if I take that back to the City Commission. If you are, please just contact me at maf@sunflower.com, and I might be convinced not to make that argument. But again, thank you for what you're doing. I think it's a sensible thing to say that they shouldn't be on the same elevation. On the other hand, the way they are, if you view them from the corner, you're going to see the two doors anyway. So I don't know if it makes as much difference as we were hoping, but thinking about it is always good. And again, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to the public hearing items. Item number 1, L-23-00021.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator. This is a application for a nomination to list a house on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. It is located at 1124 New Jersey Street, and it's the Henry Waters House. This is showing the house's location. At the top of the screen is 11th Street, and at the bottom of the screen is 12th Street. And the parcel outlined in blue is the Waters House. This is the main elevation of the structure. It was constructed in 1872, and we'll just walk around and give you some great glimpses of the architecture. This is a close-up of that main facade, and you'll notice that wide overhanging eaves with the paired brackets. This is showing the corner of the structure, and you can see here where the wraparound porch used to exist. And what's really nice is that we have evidence of ghosting right here of what the columns on the porch looked like. So in the future, when the applicant goes to restore the porch, they have some good ideas of what that porch looked like. So this is the L portion of the existing structure. This is showing that up a little bit closer so that you can see that north elevation. And this is the south elevation. And again, the south elevation, and then the rear or east elevation. This is the entrance to the basement. If you noticed in your staff report and the National Register nomination, the basement was purpose-built for the processing and distribution of patent medicine. So that's very unique in that it was located in a residential district and a residential structure constructed specifically for that use. Typically, those types of uses were in the commercial core downtown along Massachusetts Street. This is a 1995 photograph of the structure. This was taken when all of East Lawrence were surveyed for the KHRI. And you can see there was a different porch here at that time. This porch, you can tell by the design of the porch, was not original to the house. This is a 1954 photo found by the applicant, again showing that porch that does not appear to be original to the house. And I forgot to mention, in this picture, you can see the stairs leading up to that second-story door. And then here again, you can see those stairs. The property is being nominated under Criterion 1 and Criterion 4. Criterion 1 for its character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the community, county, state, or nation. The Waters House was constructed with the basement as purpose-built for the manufacturing and distribution of patent medicine. This was unusual because most businesses of this nature were located in the commercial core, as I mentioned. The C. Wakefield Company is a representative example of the development of the review of the environs area. Most of the structures maintain their residential character, and so it would also be one area with the primary focus of review being that residential character. In that area, while we're under this Chapter 22, the environs definition would be that all projects would be administrative review except for demolition, new construction, building additions above the ground level, and building additions greater than 20% of the building footprint. Projects that are new construction, demolition, above grade, additions, and additions greater than 20% of the building footprint versus commission. So staff is requesting that you find that 1124 New Jersey Street, the Henry Waters House, meets criteria 1 and 4 of Chapter 22, Section 22-403. There was a resolution included in your packet. Staff would recommend that you adopt the resolution recommending to the governing body of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, that 1124 New Jersey Street be designated as a landmark on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. With that resolution goes a report that is identified in Chapter 22, what the report should entail. It has an explanation of the significance or lack of significance of the nominated landmark, and 1124 New Jersey Street is significant for its value as part of the commercial development associated with the city. It is also significant for its architecture. Explanation of the integrity or lack of integrity of the historic structure. The structure retains integrity of design and location. In the case of a nominated landmark found to meet the criteria of designation, you should list the significant exterior architectural features of the landmark that should be protected. For the Waters House, those would be the fenestration pattern, the windows and details including lintels and seals, door openings, the historic form of the structure. The primary porch form is defined by the ghost columns of the structure, brick construction, and wide overhanging eaves with brackets. types of construction, alteration, demolition, or removal other than those requiring a building or demolition permit that cannot be undertaken without obtaining a certificate of appropriateness would be alterations to the wide overhanging eaves with brackets, window and door lintels, window sills, the fenestration pattern of the windows and doors. All that should require a certificate of appropriateness. The design guidelines to be used when reviewing projects should be the Secretary of the Interior Standards and the guidelines and criteria in Chapter 22. One of the items that the report must note is the relationship of the nominated landmark or historic district to the ongoing effort of the commission to identify and nominate all potential areas and structures that meet the criteria for designation. And that was in your staff report as well. The primary goal of the Historic Resources Commission is to build a register of properties which show the growth of Lawrence since its inception. The nomination of this property is another step toward registering a wide variety of historic properties which together present a visual history of Lawrence's past. The goal of the Lawrence Register of Historic Places is to represent all socioeconomic strata, residents, business, and industries which illustrate the diversity that has been prevalent in Lawrence since its inception. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Commissioner Klein.
I have a question. Yes, I had a question. If this property is already on the national and the Kansas registers, why is it coming up for the Lawrence register at this time? I'm a little confused about the backwardness or seeming backwardness of the process.
Well, being listed in Chapter 22 is a totally separate listing because it is under city code that the property's being listed. If you're listed in the National Register or the Kansas Register, you're not automatically listed in the Lawrence Register. So the applicant sought nomination to the National Register and the State Register prior to seeking nomination at the local level.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lynn? Do we hear from the applicant on, yes, is the applicant present? And would you like to say anything?
My name is Camille Wingo, and I'm the owner of 1124 New Jersey Street, the Waters House. Did you have a question?
Wonderful. I don't believe we have any questions, but this is your chance to say a few words if you wish. You do not have to.
I would only like to say that one of the reasons I actually did apply, I don't really, in many ways it seems superfluous, but I don't think it's superfluous because we do have some very important properties within the radius that do need to be protected. We have, in fact, some houses that the evidence seems to show that they were actually built by freed slaves. And the residents in my neighborhood, these are not, of course, these are very small houses, and these properties are not necessarily going to be protected unless changes or demolition of these houses is closely scrutinized by a committee that is concerned about preserving history. So that's my main reason for making the application, and that was why I would like to have it approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, would we like to have any discussion or hear a motion?
I need to continue public comment.
Oh,
If there's any more public
excuse me.
comment.
Is there any more public comment?
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Brown, Lawrence Preservation Alliance. We would like to extend our thanks to the owner for seeking to list this property on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. It is already listed on the state and national registers, so she's coming back, looping back around at the end to put it on the local register. And we agree that the more properties we can place on our own local Lawrence Register, the stronger our neighborhoods become. So we think it's a great idea. We're really happy about it. This house is a really interesting property. I've lived here for 45 years. First time I really noticed it was 5 years ago. I think the trees kind of hide it. But my reaction when I saw it was wondering, was I in the right place? It's a very interesting house in relation to its context. Of course, one of the values of listing properties is you get to find out the history, and the history of a property, you find out about the history of the town too. And in the nomination, we find that this house was built kind of towards the end of a boom period, and then a couple years later, the nation had a severe recession for 2 years. But not only that, the local area was beset by major grasshopper infestations for 2 consecutive years, pretty much wiping out any agricultural crop Lawrence and Douglas County had. So a few years later, the builder of this property ended up in Iola, and here we are left with this house that had a very different context grow up around it. It's a real interesting story. When this house got on the state and national registers, LPA did a couple of social media posts that got pretty major responses for us. And several people commented that even without the porch, this is one of their favorite brick Italianate houses in Lawrence.
Thank you. Other public comment? No? How about commissioner discussion? Commissioner Klein?
I just want to add some history that's been has mentioned a little bit, that Sarah A. Brown, the daughter of Reverend John S. Brown and family, Sarah was the first woman to be nominated for a state office, that of the state director of public instruction. So she's a pretty major lady to contend with, and a major feminist and suffragist, etc. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein. Do we have any other discussion or motion?
Just enjoyed hearing the report. I'm a neighbor, and we're at 10.
The motion and Commissioner Klein seconded. So now we'll take unless we have any other further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. That motion carries. Okay, item 2, DR-23-224.
This is 837 Connecticut Street. It's roof alterations. The property is located in the environs of the Turnhala, located at 900 Rhode Island Street. This is showing the property location here outlined in blue. The Turnhala is here in blue at 900 Rhode Island Street, and the environs for the Turnhala is this blue line right here that cuts through the property. This is the Turnhala, and it's under construction. I did this just so I can show a picture of the Turnhala. This is the environs map for the Turn Hall, and as you can see, 837 is here in the outer reaches of the environs, but it is located in Area 1. This is the subject property, the primary elevation. And this is showing that north elevation with one of the dormers. Here's the dormer here that would be extended. And this is showing that south elevation with the 2 dormers that would become 1 dormer and extend along the length of the structure. This is the elevation drawing supplied by the applicant of what the east-facing elevation will look like with the dormers. And this is showing that north elevation with 1 long dormer instead of the 2 separated dormers. I'm sorry, this is the south elevation. This is the north elevation. And again, showing that long dormer roof addition, and then, but on both sides it's set back 7 feet. If you'll notice in the staff report, staff mentioned that if this were listed property, this would be an inappropriate alteration for the roof. But this is an environs review, and the Turnhala environs is primarily concerned with the residential character of the neighborhood or the environs. And so staff is recommending that you find that the project meets the standards of evaluation and approve the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed project. I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Lynn. Is the applicant present? Do you wish to say anything?
Sure.
Come on up.
Hello, my name is Kane Robertson. I'm the owner of the property. Thank you so much for hearing me. The property has been built on and added several times over the years. In the stairwell, when you go up, the dormer, you would hit your head if you didn't turn to the side. So we just want to pop that dormer up so that you can walk up the stairs. And then on the left side, someone has built those 2 dormers up at some point, and there's one in the middle that's down, and we'd like to pop that one up so that we can put a bathroom so that you could get into the bathtub without going like this. And that's really what we're hoping to do. And thank you, Lynn. I've worked in the music industry my whole life, and because of COVID, I'm now in a new industry. So thank you for walking me through this learning curve, and I really appreciate all the emails and texts. So, but that's really all we're trying to do for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? No? Commissioner questions, discussions? It seems, thank you, Lynn, for explaining that it's a context or an environs review at this stage. And it would have a different recommendation if it were on the register or in a historic district, or perhaps in an overlay district. Well, if there's no discussion, I think it's, as Lynn explained it, it's appropriate modification to residents in the environs of the Turnhala.
I agree. It looks like a sensitive and will be a great addition. And with that, I would move that in accordance with Chapter 22 of the Code of the City of Lawrence, the standards of evaluation find that the proposed project will not significantly encroach on, damage, or destroy the landmarks or the environs, and issue a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed project.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, second.
Commissioner Hawley made a motion and Commissioner Johnson seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Thanks so much.
Item number 3, DR-23-00225.
One second to pull up the oh. Thank you, Kurt.
You got it.
Okay, thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. This item is DR 23-00225, and with this application, the applicant is requesting to construct a new 1.5-story single-family structure at 738 Missouri Street. The proposed project is located in the environs of the Johnson Block Historic District, and a certificate of appropriateness is required for the proposed new construction. Standard 9 of Chapter 22 and the illustrative design criteria listed in Section 22-505 apply to the proposed project. The Johnson Block Historic District is roughly bounded by 8th, Missouri, 9th, and Arkansas Streets, and is listed in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. The district is also listed on the state and national registers. On screen, you'll see a map which shows the boundaries and environs of the Johnson Block Historic District in blue. The proposed project at 738 Missouri Street would be located to the northeast of the district and is outlined in light blue. The subject property is currently undeveloped. The proposed structure would have a footprint of approximately 2,183 square feet, which includes a 528 square foot attached garage at the rear of the structure. On screen is the proposed site plan for the property, which shows the footprint of the structure with the attached garage at the rear. These are the west and north elevations of the proposed structure. Stucco would be used on the exterior of the main portion of the structure, while the exterior of the attached garage would be finished using fiber cement lap siding. Wood-clad casement windows would be used on all sides of the structure, and an insulated carriage house-style overhead garage door would be used on the west end of the structure. The roof of the structure would be finished using laminate asphalt shingles and pre-finished aluminum gutters and downspouts. The proposed project would maintain the residential character of the environs and would generally be compatible with the scale or the size, scale, colors, and materials of the environs. However, attached garages are atypical for the environs. Based on the applicable standards of review, staff is of the opinion that the proposed project with the attached garage would not meet the standards and guidelines for review. If the attached garage were removed from the structure, staff could find that the proposed project to be compatible for the environs. Staff did share this finding with the applicant to see if they would be open to detaching the garage from the structure, and the applicant did decide to proceed with the plans as proposed, including the attached garage. Staff would also recommend that the cedar trim and lattice panels proposed would recommend that they be painted, since unpainted wood is not considered an appropriate material for the environs. So as proposed, staff is of the opinion that the proposed project with the attached garage would significantly encroach on, damage, or destroy the landmark or its environs, and recommends denying the certificate of appropriateness for the project. I'd be happy to help answer any questions the commission may have.
Can we see the drawings again?
Is that good, or do you want to see the north
Yes.
and west? or the,
Well, and
I'm
this
sorry.
is Commissioner Johnson. What's on the east elevation, the breezeway?
I apologize. The slides were mislabeled. The elevations on the screen right now are the east elevations, which would be the face of the side of the structure that would have the attached garage.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the elevation with the breezeway section is without the attached garage, and then the garage portion of that structure is, the elevation is provided on the right.
So if it was decided that the garage would be detached, there would be a breezeway versus it being indoors completely. Is that, or am I completely misunderstanding?
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that too.
So the breezeway would be there and provided as a connection between the attached garage or the garage space and then the front portion of the structure.
Oh.
So let me see if I can go back one more time. So on this north elevation, you can see the front portion of the structure here is in that stucco finish, and then this would be the breezeway portion connecting into the garage space.
Okay.
So the breezeway would also be finished with the horizontal lap siding.
And just to confirm, I mean, the breezeway is in fact a solid portion of building. It's not as illustrated here, it appears to be.
Correct.
Well, and that's confusing to me because I wouldn't necessarily call that a breezeway. It's just, I mean, the house,
Well, I think it might be appropriate now to
Yeah.
hear from the applicant, if the applicant is present.
Hi, Chair Coleman and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and bring this project before you tonight. I do have a thumb drive with some photos, context photos, if that's something I can share.
Give me just 1 second. Should be able to connect in.
Okay.
Do you want me to help pull it up on there?
Yeah.
Let's
Show me
see
where I
here.
can do it and scroll. Great.
Kingston, above that.
Yeah, Kingston, there we go. Kingston.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Okay, so,
Okay.
and so, yeah, you can open them, and then you'll, Kurt, will you be able to share the screen, or should he share?
I'm trying to highlight all of them and trying to open them. Well, are you going to share all of them, or are you just going to show like a couple?
I was just going to browse through them quickly once I get to that point.
Okay.
I mean, I should be able to, if it works here, I should be able to handle it, I think. Just to start, I wanted to thank staff for the review. I have a sense that the denial, the suggestion of denial based on the attachment of the garage is I mean, maybe a little idealistic in terms of the context, for one. I mean, part of what I'll show with the context in these photos is that there are quite a number of attached garages, and some of them are not done well, and some of them, are okay. As I drive through the neighborhood and I try to get a feel myself for the context, and what you experience when you drive through these areas. Effectively, keep in mind that we're talking about the alleys. We're not talking about the street. We wouldn't really even be able to see the garage from the street. So the context would be more as if, you were driving down the alley, honestly, just outside of the environs, because the environs actually cuts through our lot, and this garage in question is completely out of the environs. It's on the property that's cut by the environs, but I don't want to split hairs on that, but effectively, I appreciate the general idea that we should be protecting the listed properties on the Johnson block. I do have, I guess, I take issue with the level at which that review might begin to encroach on people's convenience of use of their homes, especially when we're building, a new structure on an empty lot. When this owner came to me specifically to design this house, it was partly because I do a lot of historic work, and I'm sort of used to dealing with things in historic context. And when we started the project, we knew that attached garages weren't the ideal. So, we did have a discussion with staff, and the general idea was that we were going to look at this house and its attached garage in the best light possible with regard to historic context. And in that, we're looking at a 1.5-story house, not a really big house. And with the garage, it's a 1-story garage, and it's attached with a hyphen. I may have called it a breezeway in a drawing, but you're right, it's effectively part of the house. It's a heated attached part of the house, and part of it has a bathroom and a pantry in it. Really, I guess at this point, I could walk through a couple. Let's see if I can get it to share here. Am I going to need to hit share screen here?
I think so, yeah. Try.
I see.
There we go.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so now let's see. Oh, it looks like I should be able to browse through it. So this is just a quick example, and I'll just try to do these real quick so we don't waste a whole lot of time on it. But this is an example of a type of attached garage that appears to be a historic structure in the district. And again, I'm not going to try to figure out exactly where all these are in relation to the Johnson block. Some of them were on the Johnson block that I'll show, and others were not. They're just kind of general context and area of the environs. And here's another one. I believe this is the one right next door, another attached garage as seen from the back. Both, basement type garages. And again, this is one of the things I wanted to point out is that we've built a lot of these neighborhoods and back accessory structures up to the scale that I don't know whether this is an attached garage or not. I can't tell. You literally cannot tell. You drive down the alley in a lot of these areas, and the sense you get is a bit of a canyon. I mean, you do see a few occasional small detached structures that are freestanding with no fences, and you can clearly see it's a detached structure, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's completely the norm here. But just, again, I'm just going to browse through these quickly and try to make a couple comments. So in this one, again, I don't know whether that's attached or not, but you get the sense that this is the character we're talking about. Again, not wholly appropriate here. This is on Michigan Street in the neighborhood. But again, it's environed. It's outside of the official environs, but it's sort of general character. This one, I believe, is on 9th and Michigan. Again, this is the context. This is a new structure that I believe was built in the last couple years. And again, it's to the extent that it may be. I assume whether this one had to go through HRC or not, I'm not sure whether it's quite in the actual environs of the Johnson block or whether it was in an environs, but. Again, the context here is that there are a lot of these structures that you really can't tell whether they're attached or not. I'm not 100% certain whether that one was. I didn't get in there. And then there's some historic ones that may or may not be listed, but again, that's an attached structure in the very close area. Again, I would say this clearly is an old house, and I think they probably were doing something similar to what we're doing, but I don't think they did it quite as well or sensitively as we tried to do with a hyphen. And this is clearly a 1.5-story garage attached addition where we would be a lot shorter than that and attached in a much more sensitive way. This is another fairly new structure that is just a long continuation of a little historic brick house in the area. This is the other view of that. Again, context, it just depends. If you're slightly off angle, you can't really tell whether things are attached or not in a lot of these. And just general context. This is another attached garage in very close. I think another new structure, again, I'm not entirely sure whether that one's attached or not. I couldn't quite see from where I was taking my photos from. Again, that gives you kind of an idea of the sort of, that's what the viewer sees when they go down an alley. You're not really, if you're a planner or an architect looking at an aerial photo, you might be able to tell that there's a little carriage house in a back lot. But when you're driving down the alley, that's kind of what you experience. And whether something is attached or not, again, I think it's a pretty difficult standard that may not really be serving us as well as some of the other standards that might regard scale of accessory structures. Again, back to scale and attached. Another fairly new structure, again, scale. It meets the standards because it's smaller and shorter, but I think that what we presented is a lot more sensitive than a lot of what I'm seeing in the area. And let's see. There was a couple, well, I don't need to really show it. I just wanted to point out, it was on the earlier photo when staff shared the environs. The environs do cut through the yard, and the garage is wholly outside of that line. Long story short, I think we feel like we did a pretty good job of being sensitive to the historic context, and we'd ask that you consider approving what we've presented, or if you think that it could be improved without detaching it, without disconnecting it, with some modifications, we'd be willing to go before the ARC as well. Any questions I can answer?
Commissioner Klein has a question.
I have a couple of questions. One, this is on, the property is undeveloped. I wasn't sure. I guess my question is how long it's been an empty lot, and to observe that this would be a brand new structure. So that's, well, one question. Second question is, I noticed yellow wavy lines on the lot at one of the drawings, and it made me think about stormwater drainage. Which ties into my first question. Is the lot undeveloped because it used to have flooding on that particular lot? So I have three intertwined questions there.
I'm unaware of the history of the lot. My client bought it from a local realtor. Exactly how it became to be vacant, I have no idea. The yellow line is really it's just a contour line from the city's GIS mapping, and it's there to indicate the slope of the grade from higher at the west side of the lot to lower at the east side of the lot. And part of the design solution there has the house, trying to be appropriate, maybe four or five steps up on the front, so that it feels, historic, effectively. It's sitting on a basement, so it's up out of the ground, as most of the older homes are. And then the garage is down at ground level towards the alley, so at several steps lower. I want to say the back of the lot's maybe 3 foot lower, and I don't believe there's any flooding issues or stormwater structures. There is a stormwater drain in the alley behind this property, so I think it's probably managed pretty well.
This is Avery Kerner, planning staff. I pulled up the online interactive map, and the aerial images for the property as far back as 1995 show that it's remained undeveloped. And yeah, I turned on the flood layers. It doesn't look like there's any floodplain encumbering the property. And then the applicant is correct. There is some stormwater infrastructure along the alley, but not on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say 1995?
Do you believe that the client, the owner, would entertain detaching the garage, keeping, building the garage, but not having it actually physically attached?
I think that we would prefer to have it attached. I mean, that's what she hired me to get done for her. I think that most anybody would want to be able to walk from their car to into their house without going up icy steps, if possible. At the end of the day, if would she try to go around this body? I don't know. We haven't had that discussion. I got the sense that if a design was sensitive in this manner, if it was done in a way that the standard of having no attached garages to houses might be a little stringent, and that might be something that HRC could see their way to approve. That was my feeling early on. I mean, I don't know that that's where we are now. That was that was the sense I got. So this is what we're trying to do.
And a question to either you or Lynn, just out of curiosity in the conversations with this, because I do feel this is sensitive in massing. It's smaller. I love the joy of fear every time I walk from my car to my house, but I like to live on the edge. But out of curiosity, were there any discussions where would staff, if there were tweaks to the architectural character of the breezeway to make it more distinctly hyphen? I was just curious if anything else was explored.
We did not have those discussions.
We haven't had those discussions.
But that would be something that would be appropriate for ARC to investigate.
Yeah, I'm wondering that as well.
It strikes me that, I mean, I did attempt to set this off with a different type of siding. Now that's a different type of siding for the garage and the breezeway connector than the house, and we could handle a more distinct differentiation with paint, where that middle part seems a lot lessened. But again, it could be another material entirely. It could be potentially more glazing.
And just to be clear, I was just
We haven't had.
not
we haven't had-
suggesting.
we
I was
haven't-
just trying to.
Yeah, we haven't gone there yet.
Any other questions for the applicant? Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Brown, Lawrence Preservation Alliance. Michael Delaney and I have discussed this in preparing for tonight, and our thoughts are really jiving with where the tenor of this conversation is starting to go. The house design is pretty cool. The front looks sweet, but our issues are with this thing that attaches the garage to the house. It's not a breezeway. It kind of wants to be a hyphen or a connector, but the way it's drawn, it seems to be a continuation of the house. We think a trip to the ARC should easily keep this property in a state where it wouldn't have to be denied. And I think the things to look at would be bumping the connector in a little bit, especially where it's with that, I don't know if it's the south or north side where it's just a big line of the house and the garage with maybe a slight 1 foot bump in or something. But the main thing, I think, that's throwing this out of the hyphen territory and into that's still part of the house territory, is the height of the ridge line. It's the same height as the garage. Why does a connector whose sole function is to walk from the garage in a sheltered way to the back of the house have to be that tall? If the roof line of the connector is dropped way down, LPA feels like this could easily be approved, and we would hope that the applicant would want to discuss that with the ARC.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? Okay, hearing none, do we have any discussion, commissioners? Any thoughts?
Well, I was thinking, Commissioner Klein, I was thinking in the same lines along Dennis Brown and even Commissioner Hawley's intimations that I would move that we send this project to the ARC for further tweaking, whatever possible solutions that might be that have been discussed or something else entirely. I think that would be a good idea.
Is that a motion?
That was a motion. So I move that we send this item DR 2300225 to the Architectural Review Committee.
I'd second that, and I would just add, while seconding and commenting, I personally can't speak for the board, but think that with the ARC and some discussion, a solution that maintains it being an enclosed connector, not an open breezeway, would be something that I think would ultimately be compatible.
I would agree.
And this is Commissioner Johnson, and looking at it, opposite where the pantry and the bathroom are that connect to the garage is a covered porch, and then there's a patio. So there looks like there's some opportunities there to do some rearranging, and I don't know, even the possibility of a screened-in sort of porch that connects the garage with the rest of the house would maybe be a possibility. I don't know.
I believe we could find a solution.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? So we'll take a roll call vote to send the project to ARC. Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. So 6 to ARC.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, DR-23-00188.
Okay, good evening again. This item is DR-23-00188, and with this application, the applicant is requesting to rehabilitate and relocate the existing accessory structure on site from the northeast corner to the southeast corner of the property, and to construct a second accessory structure on site at 822 Rhode Island Street. The proposed project is located in the North Rhode Island Street Historic Residential District, which is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Standards 1, 2, 5, 6, and 9 of the Secretary of the Interior's standards for state law review apply to the proposed project. Also, I'd like to note that, as mentioned in the staff report, this property came before the HRC for a different project back in March, which was a request to demolish the primary structure on site and to replace that structure with a new 2-story duplex. That primary structure is a non-contributing structure, and the HRC approved the demolition and new construction plans, but did deny a carport that was included in the proposed project. On screen, there are 2 maps which show the location of the subject property in relation to the North Rhode Island Street Historic District. The first image shows the entirety of the district in red, and the second image provides a close-up view of the subject property within the historic district. The green dots on the screen represent contributing structures, and the red dots represent the structures that are not contributing to the district. This image is showing the south elevation of the existing accessory structure on site, and that structure is identified as a contributing structure to the North Rhode Island Historic District. Again, the applicant is proposing to relocate the existing accessory structure from the northeast corner of the site, shown on the screen here in red, to the southeast corner of the site, shown in green. In its current location, the existing accessory structure opens to the south. Relocating the accessory structure would include rotating the structure so that the garage door opens towards the alley to the east. This is the proposed site plan for the property, which shows the proposed new location of the existing accessory structure in the southeast corner of the site, and the new accessory structure that would be proposed in the northeast corner of the site. As you can see, the footprint of the proposed accessory structure would be only slightly larger than the footprint of the existing accessory structure. Rehabilitating the accessory structure would include placing the structure on new footings, replacing the damaged horizontal lap siding, and replacing the roof with a new asphalt shingle roof. These are the elevations for the proposed accessory structure provided by the applicant. These elevations were added to this evening's packet just earlier today. Lap siding and asphalt shingle roofing would be used on the new accessory structure to match the existing accessory structure. Overall, the proposed project meets many of the standards and guidelines for compatible new construction and for the relocation and rehabilitation of the contributing accessory structure. While the orientation of the contributing structure would be altered, the structure and its historic use would be preserved. Based on the applicable standards of review, staff is of the opinion that the proposed project would not damage or destroy the historic property or district and recommends approval of the proposed project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
So in our March meeting, or I think that was the right one, we approved the residents but not the carport. That's correct? Yes.
Correct. The site plan shows the duplex, the footprint of the approved duplex structure. The carport that was proposed would have been located at the southeast corner of the structure. But yes, that portion of the project was denied.
Any questions for staff? Is the applicant present?
I do not believe the applicant is present. I know Chris Cunningham, the applicant, said that he wasn't going to be able to attend tonight, but indicated that maybe the co-applicant or property owner would be able to attend, but they are not in attendance.
Okay, well then, we'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none. Any discussion from commission?
I think it looks fine.
I also believe it's a acceptable design. Retaining the existing garage, I think, is a good thing, and putting it on a new foundation and fixing it up and moving it to the side so that another car garage could be constructed, both freestanding. I think that is appropriate.
I'll move that in accordance with the Secretary of State, Secretary of the Interior standards, the standards of evaluation, to approve the project and make the determination that the project would not destroy the historic property included in the National Register of Historic Places.
I will second that motion. Any discussion? Oh, let's take a roll call vote. Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye, but I've lost count. Did I get everyone?
Got everyone.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion carries. Great. So now it's time for agenda item, public comment item number 5, public hearing for revisions to Chapter 22.
So unless there's a burning desire by the commission, I'm not going to pull up the document and go through it. What was posted was what you had directed staff last month to put out for public comment. That has been online since that last meeting. We did not receive any public comment until today. We received comment from the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association. That was added to your packet earlier today. Staff went through some of their questions and concerns just so you would have that information available as you look to move forward with this. If you want to make additional changes and come back, if you want to make additional changes and have the document move forward to the city attorney's office for final review before it goes to the city commission for review, or any other direction you may have for staff. The first item they had was in section 22-102E, should also include infrastructure, sidewalks, stone curbs, sidewalks, and similar elements. Staff is suggesting that you add objects to the list between structures and properties, and then add to the definition and the definition section those brick streets, sidewalks, stone curbs, sidewalks, and similar elements. And so that seemed like a fairly simple change that you could make this evening to the documents should you so choose. Their next one was section 22-110B1 that should also include historic infrastructure and streetscapes and viewscapes. Staff looked at these and went through the document and is of the opinion that the environs is equivalent to viewscapes and streetscapes. It kind of incorporates those elements as part of the environs. So is not recommending any changes for that item. Section 22-210B8 refers to methods of informing the public. Elna believes that methods should include digital resources, And staff is recommending that you add that to section 22-210B8 to allow for that digital resources to be part of that. Section 22-210B10, Elna believes Lawrence should develop specific design criteria with genuine community involvement and historic preservation best practices. Staff is of the opinion that there are no changes needed in this section because the city's public engagement process requires us to work with the public, have public meetings, open public meetings for specific questions like we did in January for this document. We held public meetings, invited the public to attend, and then we've had public meetings at most of your meetings since November. And also, as far as best preservation practices, this chapter is reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office to make sure it reflects best preservation practices. So staff is not recommending any changes associated with that item. Section 22-210B11 would require notifications, and the ordinance should also include neighbors, neighborhood associations, where applicable, and civic organizations interested in historic preservation activities. Staff was unclear on what this was referring to because 210B11 is the requirement of city agencies to submit to the HRC. So it was getting at development permits, projects from municipal services and operations, that they would have to submit those permits to the HRC for review. But it is a good point that neighborhood associations should be included, and if the portion of the document regarding landmark notification, that the public has something that says that notification should be sent to the public that has requested information, but perhaps this could be expanded to possibly add registered neighborhood associations to that section. Section 22-210B16, Elna suggests changing the term governing body to governing bodies in order to include county commission and other governing bodies when communication with these entities is appropriate. This is a city ordinance, and so it's directing city business, and so our legal department has specifically put in governing body to be reflective of what the Historic Resources Commission's responsibilities are. So staff is not recommending any changes. Section 22-210B19, Elna agrees that applicable individuals should strive to attend seminars, and suggest adding the language and seek funding to do so as necessary. I think this is kind of a given in our climate that we always seek whatever opportunities we can to make sure those opportunities that exist out there can be taken advantage of by the Historic Resources Commission. So staff is not recommending any changes for that. Section 22-301C2, Elna suggests language referencing groupings of landmarks because of their type, such as barns, craftsman houses, religious sites, etc., specifically areas in and adjacent to East Lawrence that contain historic resources relating to early Lawrence pre-Quantrill, the railroad, early industry, World War II, working class, vernacular housing types, and various ethnicities. This is the section on survey and what to survey. Putting things in thematic nominations is the next step once you do the survey of properties. And so staff is not recommending any changes to the survey section of this. The survey should incorporate all buildings in an area and then come together with thematic nominations to be listed. So staff is not recommending any changes to that section. Section 22301C3, ILNA strongly believes economic hardship should include low-income individuals and families, and that appropriate language should be inserted into Article 6. I know we've had a little bit of discussion about Article 6 in the past and exactly what the intent there is to do. This section only notes the types of review for certificate of approval. Additional information is not appropriate for this section. Article 6, economic hardship can be for anyone, not just low-income individuals and families, and they should not be singled out. Examples of economic hardship are only when a certificate of approval is required, not for ordinary maintenance, and is not required unless the property owner is taking some action on their property. An example would be a property owner wants to build an addition to their home. They want to use vinyl siding instead of a compatible siding, and they would, because the compatible siding is too expensive. And so they would apply for certificate of economic hardship and would go through that process to show why it would be a financial burden not to use compatible materials versus vinyl siding. The other example of that would be if a property owner wants to demolish a historic structure because the rehabilitation cost would be an economic hardship on the applicant. And so this section, Article 6, sets up the documentation that would need to be presented to make that determination that it could not be feasibly rehabilitated on a cost would be an economic hardship. So the economic hardship section of the document is not to impose economic intentions on low income or people of an economic status, but rather if those people seek to do something to their property, which would not, ordinary maintenance does not count for this section. It would be if they're actively seeking to do something to the property. So it is not meant to be punitive in any way. It's to allow for people who, like I said, want to put on an addition and want to use siding instead of a compatible material, and they would prove why that siding was cheaper and met their responsibilities easier than using composition siding. So staff is not recommending any changes to Article 6. The next one was Section 22505B and 22604. ILNA believes that there is an appeal process beyond the City Commission to the Kansas SHPO. If so, this should be spelled out. This, again, is Chapter 22. It's a city ordinance, and it's only for properties that are listed in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places and in the context area of historic places. The SHPO has no review or say in the how this process works, or they are not an appeal process. The SHPO reviews are for state law review, and that's a separate type of review. They look at properties that are listed in the National Register or the Kansas Register, not the Lawrence Register. So staff is not recommending any changes to that section. Section 22-1004, 22-1201, and 22-1301. ILNA agrees that required minimum maintenance can be an important tool for preserving historic resources, unfortunately for low-income individuals and families who are struggling to survive, and I won't go ahead and read all that. You see it in your letter. Minimum maintenance code exists in the city code. What the minimum maintenance section of Chapter 22 does is just identify that minimum maintenance standard from the city code will also apply to historic properties. The submission of a building or demolition permit is what enacts the certificate of approval process. So maintenance does not typically require a certificate of approval. And those are the changes that staff reviewed from that communication from East Lawrence Neighborhood Association. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Commissioner Klein has a question.
I have several questions, but my first one is, I'm beginning to count how many times that there have been communications that I or maybe other commissioners did not know about until the last minute. I personally cannot digest all of this information, and also I was trying to write as fast as possible to write down what the comment was and then also what staff response was. And I personally don't have time to digest it all in this given time of this meeting. I would personally like a whole lot more time to consider it and to understand the implications and the ramifications of what the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association is asking for and the criteria or the rationale that staff is applying to this. I could go on with each one of these points, but I mean, because again, I'd like to raise the economic hardship article. I still do not understand it. I see it as a loophole for people to say, I'd rather demolish a property, historic property, contributing structure, than and to build something new. And it's a hardship if I can't do that. I don't understand that article. So I'll quit talking, but I for one would not want to move on on approving chapter 22 without having more time to consider each of these points that the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association has raised.
What is the next step? Is it going to the city attorney? Is that what you said?
Right. If the commission approves the draft chapter this evening, the next step would be to the city attorney's office. They've looked at it one time, but not since all the changes have been made. So they would look at all the changes that have been made, place it in ordinance form, and then place it on a city commission agenda, whether that be a study session and then a public hearing for the determination of the ordinance at a later date, or if they want to just do the public meeting for the ordinance, that would be up to the city commission.
I see. Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Well, and is this questions just in general or related to this?
Related to
those sets of comments?
Or general
in
questions.
any
Okay.
chapter 22.
Okay. All right. I had a question about the changes to the chapter about environs, and would that, the earlier application with the garage and the garage being like cut off of the boundary line, would the changes we're making to chapter 22 change any of that assessment?
For that particular case,
yeah,
the new structure would be located in the environ, so it would still get reviewed. If it was a detached garage and outside that environs line, it would not get reviewed.
Okay. And then kind of picking up on things that we've had tonight, the first comments by Candace Davis about massing and scale, and I know that's part of the ORIAD guidelines, but I was wondering whether the new illustrations would help with something similar happening under these guidelines of avoiding those issues of, gosh, that does look out of scale, or that massing isn't appropriate.
I think the illustrations really help with that. I think it's always going to come down to a case-by-case basis. and trying to use that illustration to give you direction.
Well, it's just, I was looking at those illustrations, and particularly the one on scale, and the scale and directional expression, and thinking, gosh, I think that would have influenced how those other buildings were built in the case she was showing us. I think it would be obvious, oh yeah, that needs to be turned a different way and be of a smaller size and all of that. So I'm always, as you can tell, I'm interested in finding real life examples that I can imagine how the ordinance would apply. So that's why I'm checking in. Okay, thank you.
Lynn, Commissioner Holly, Lynn, question just the action before the board with the ELNA comments. I know we haven't voted on that. Personally, I agree with staff's assessment on all of the items that you went line by line. My only question to you is notifying neighborhoods, is that when you say registered neighborhoods, is that with formal city, they're registered?
Right, the city has a list of recognized neighborhood associations.
So what actions are available to us? Like, could we approve 22, but accepting staff's recommendations to incorporate and clarify per ELNA's, because it's not final language yet?
Oh, do it concurrently?
That's what I'm asking, if they're distinct or if we have to get another round of updated language. If
Before
other
the city
commissioners
attorney, yeah.
similarly agreed, say with Lynn's fairly, I thought, straightforward and thoughtful assessment on
Yeah.
ELNA's, do we need to say, do we move on that and then get another round and delay it yet another month?
Yeah, I was wondering the same, and I, like Commissioner Klein, I felt very unprepared when I saw all those comments come in at the last minute. I was not, didn't have time to think about them. As you talked about them, I think I agree, but it's hard to make a decision at this moment, I think. But we should, before we consider anything, call for public comment, if there's any, at this time. Okay, I hear no public comment, so I'll take it back to discussion amongst the commissioners. Is anyone else feeling like we need some more time to think about this? Yeah.
Yes, I feel I need more time to think about it. In terms of, I just want to review a few things quickly. The first point about adding sidewalks and objects and brick streets and so forth, that was a point that the East Lawrence neighborhood made from the very beginning of the process, and I had requested that to be added to definitions quite a long time ago. Let's see, no danger. I need more time to think. I need time to read the comments in contrast with in comparison to staff's recommendations. Do you know what I mean? I need to read those side by side and to study that. I'm not prepared to pass chapter 22 at this time.
Does the city attorney require a fully completed document in order to start their review?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and so this is Commissioner Johnson. Would it be appropriate for us to continue this until our next meeting and ask staff to respond to the East Lawrence comments with their suggestions that they presented tonight, but show us a draft with that in there so that we can see what that language would look like? I don't know.
I quite like that suggestion. Lynn, that would be something that, could staff send your responses to the commission via email, so long as we don't all reply? It's not an open meeting, but it gives time to digest and discuss at the next meeting, and not take 2 meetings to do it, unless required.
Because I would be afraid about kind of making those changes on the fly tonight, and then it possibly ends up altering something that another interested group had commented on. and then it would cause issues that were inadvertent. I also don't want to delay it, but I think we've had such good public comment and participation in this, and the chapter is so much more improved. Means it's like we're so close to having something very good that it's like, why don't we just take one extra meeting and get it as right as we can before sending it on?
I tend to agree. I do wonder if those comments came in during the comment period.
The way we take public comment is you have until 10 o'clock on the day of the meeting to make written public comment to get posted to the agenda packet.
Yes, okay. Okay, it looks like we have some public comment right now.
Mike Delaney from the Preservation Alliance. Would it be the Commission's expectation that public comment generally will be held open until the next meeting, or that public comment is closed except for the digesting of the comments that have been received to date? I mean, the alternative is that there may be another one of these that happens, and then the can gets kicked down the road another month. So.
Yeah.
Yes. Good point.
Yeah, that's what I'm not interested in delaying this just for the heck of it. It would be for these particular comments. I mean, because we have been at this for a while and have diligently responded to comments and made changes.
And it does seem, as Commissioner Klein pointed out, on some of them, we have talked about them before.
Yeah.
Like that item on the objects being defined as brick streets and sidewalks and stone curbs. And the other items, I agree that they're already covered, except for those couple additions that she suggested.
And I don't suppose, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. I don't suppose can we close the public hearing and continue this till our next meeting? So the public hearing's closed.
But if it's on next meeting's agenda, then that public...
It would be a public meeting, and you would still be able to make public comment on it at next month's meeting.
I mean, the alternative is, that we continue it, and yes, more comments could come up. Or we tough it out tonight and digest it.
Well, one of the questions, again, sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein is, as you know, I'm the least expert on this, on the legalese in the language and the discussions, and I've tried really hard. I have read and read and reread and reread and sought to understand exactly what's going on throughout the document. For example, in terms of a survey, and again, I haven't had a chance to digest what East Lawrence technically asked about landmark types in historic times, but one of my questions has always been, how do you get a survey started? When I look at the Lawrence map of historic resources, of historic properties in terms of what's already been registered for Lawrence, there are huge gaps in the southern part of East Lawrence, for example, as well as other neighborhoods. And I don't see anywhere in the Chapter 22 that addresses how does any given property or an area or something, how can we make it happen? How can anyone make it happen that a section could be surveyed so that more properties could be considered for the Lawrence Register?
I can answer that, Commissioner Klein. Part of what we do and what will come before this body as soon as Chapter 22 moves forward would be the definition of a work plan. That work plan would identify areas of the city to be surveyed and in what priority order. If there were specific themes that needed to be studied, those themes could also be studied through that survey. Typically, surveys are funded by a certified local government grant from the Historic Preservation Office. We do not have the staff funding or capability to do those surveys in-house. So we apply for grants based on the work plan that the Historic Resources Commission sets. The work plan that we've been working on or under for the past, I think it's about 15 years, was done when the preservation plan was adopted several, like about 50, I think it's 15 years ago, that designated areas as low, middle, and high priority. We've since been working off that document. For example, the last survey that we received funding for was the Barker neighborhood. And we had to divide that into two different phases of survey due to funding. But now we're ready to update our maps with what would be the next areas that would need to get surveyed. So it'll be a work plan established by the Historic Resources Commission that would identify what surveys go next.
Thank you.
Okay, so to summarize, we could decide to make a motion to add the 3 items that staff recommended. I think there were 3 by my count, from East Lawrence Association into Chapter 22. Or we could decide to delay to the next meeting, having that summary sent to the commissioners on each item. Was it just 3? The objects to the 22-102E.
Commissioner or Chairwoman Coleman, I believe that I was writing as fast as possible, and I believe that there were 11 points that East Lawrence raised, and then staff had comments or explanations back. So I don't know which 3 points you're talking about.
Yes, I'm talking about the first one, adding the word objects and then defining that word. The third item, adding digital resources to the methods of informing the public. And then the fifth item, adding neighborhood associations to the required list of notified parties. And the other items, she explained that she, in her determination, that those things are already covered in chapter 22 somewhere. I believe those are the notes I took.
That's what I have.
Okay.
I could, in terms of neighborhood associations that are registered, the word registered is a little unclear to me. I know there's a list online of names of neighborhoods, but there are newer neighborhood associations asking to be created, as time goes on. So I'm not sure that they have to be registered per se, is my question. That's unclear to me.
I think if they're not registered, how would you know who to send the notification to?
And that they represented the neighborhood.
Right. And I would think that it would or not retroactively. It would include then future registered neighborhood associations by definition.
The way things work now is when there's a property that's, not historic, not dealing with historic, but when there's any kind of a property that's coming up for any kind of a change, the city automatically sends all the addresses in that vicinity a notification of what's going on, so they have a chance to, give a public comment. So that's why I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I think it's incredible. I think it's good that neighborhood associations need to be included somewhere in the document here. I agree with that. I'm not clear exactly which line and where and definitions and all that.
I can provide a little bit of additional information on that. So what Commissioner Klein just stated was correct, that if there's a development application submitted to the planning office, notice goes out to all property owners within a certain radius of that proposed development. And then any neighborhood association that is registered with the planning office, and so there's a form on our website that would need to be filled out, providing contact information to the planning division. So any neighborhood association that is formally registered with the planning office is also included in that notification of the development application if its boundaries are within that radius or contiguous to that notice area. And so under the Land Development Code, a neighborhood association has to be registered in order to receive that notification. If not, the notice only goes to the property owners within that radius.
I think I've talked myself into trying to move through this tonight.
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. I mean, if I were to make a motion, I would move for approval of this draft of Chapter 22 with the changes recommended by staff tonight on the 3 items described earlier. And I would be comfortable with that, but that's me.
I think I would agree.
Is that a motion or a hypothetical?
Well,
I think you want to discuss it.
it's a motion. I make it a motion. There you go.
Seconded.
Wonderful. Commissioner Johnson made a motion and Commissioner Hawley seconded. Any discussion?
Would you repeat the motion again before we actually vote?
Well, and is there, let me see, was there some actual nice language that I should have used from the, no, okay. I move for approval of the final draft of Chapter 22 with additional language related to 3 items from the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association concerning objects, digital resources, and registered neighborhood associations. And that's it. And ask staff to draft that language.
Include that in Chapter 22 and send it on to the attorney.
Yep.
Commissioner Hawley, does your second stand?
It does. That was a very clear extemporaneous motion. I applaud you.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye, only for those 3 stated language areas.
Is that
But not,
totality?
but not.
Otherwise, I have to vote nay because I need more time to really study everything.
Okay.
Let me just vote nay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Izell.
Izell, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. So we have 5 ayes and 1 nay. Did you get that, Lynn?
I did, thank you.
Okay, so then we'll move on to miscellaneous items, number 1. SUP-23-00231.
I did.
Yeah. So this is a special use permit application for a healthcare office use at 1910 Haskell Avenue. There is no action required by the Historic Resource Commission on this item, but since it's in the environs of a locally listed property, it's being forwarded, or it's being provided to you all for the opportunity for public comment if that's appropriate. But again, no action is required of the commission.
Thank you. I'm not sure what to do next.
Ask if there's any comment from any of the commissioners.
Commissioners, do you have any comments? Do we take public comment or no?
No.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to review or to peruse. All right. Is that all? We done?
Staff has no more miscellaneous items, but we would ask if there are any miscellaneous items from the commission.
Nope, hearing none. I believe we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
All for a productive meeting.
Yes.
Lynn or Avery or anyone, non-commission item, but on the site plan, I noticed that the Mad Greek has a spot in those. Is that
Is that true?
I am not